The esophagus, commonly known as the gullet, is an organ which consists of a muscular tube through which food passes from the pharynx to the stomach. The esophagus is continuous with the laryngeal part of the pharynx. It passes through the posterior mediastinum in the thorax and enters the stomach through a hole in the thoracic diaphragm. The esophageal hiatus at the level of the 10th thoracic vertebrae, its length varies 25 centimeters, varying with height. It is divided into the cervical, thoracic, and abdominal parts. The pharynx joins the esophagus of the esophageal inlet, which is behind the cricoid cartilage. At the rest, the esophagus is closed at both ends by the upper and lower esophageal sphincters. The opening of the upper sphincter is triggered by the swallowing reflex, so that food is allowed through. The sphincter also serves to prevent backflow from the esophagus into the pharynx. The esophagus has a mucous membrane, and the epithelium, which has a protective function, is continuously replaced due to the volume of food that passes inside the esophagus. During swallowing, food passes from the mouth through the pharynx into the esophagus. The epiglottis folds down to a more horizontal position so as to prevent food from going into the trachea, instead directing it to the esophagus. Once in the esophagus, the bolus travels down to the stomach via rhythmic contraction and relaxation of muscles known as peristalsis. The lower esophageal sphincter is a muscular sphincter surrounding the lower part of the esophagus. The junction between the esophagus and the stomach, the gastroesophageal junction, is controlled by the lower esophageal sphincter, which remains constricted at all times other than during swallowing and vomiting, to prevent the contents of the stomach from entering the esophagus. As the esophagus does not have the same protective acid from the stomach, any failure of this sphincter can lead to heartburn. The esophagus has a mucous membrane of epithelium, which has a protective function, as well as providing a small surface for the passage of food. Due to the high volume of food that is passed over time, this membrane is continuously renewed.